Hey kids, it's good to be back with you today for one of my magical lessons. I'm Pastor John, and today I want to tell you a story about King David. King David was a good king, a man after God's own heart. But one day, when King David was standing on the roof of his palace, David was tempted to sin. Now, it's not a sin to be tempted, but it is a sin to give in to temptation and to do that which we know is wrong to do. And that's what David did. He yielded to temptation with Bathsheba. Now, I have a clear tube here. You can see right through that tube. Represents our heart. It's clear, you can see through it when there's not sin in our heart. But when we sin, sin takes residence in our hearts and it breaks up our relationship with God. Now, let me just take this red silk and use this red silk as an illustration of sin, and we'll just put it inside King David's heart like that, because he yielded to temptation and he did that which he knew was wrong to do. But what King David was, after all, the king. He's a king of Israel, and he thought what he could do is, hey, no big deal, I can cover this sin up so nobody can see it. So what I'm going to do is I've got this purple paper here, and I'm just going to take that, roll it up like that, and here is King David with his heart rolled up inside of his purple robe. Nobody can see that he's sinned and he's done wrong. Is he right in thinking nobody can see? You're right, he's wrong, because God can see. Now, you may not be able to see his heart. And because he was king, David thought, I can be king and I can get away with a lot of stuff. And so King David ordered that Uriah, Bathsheba's husband, go into battle that resulted in the death of Uriah. And because David was king, he could marry Bathsheba and his sin would be all covered up. But there was one who knew what David had done. That's right, it was God. And God's prophet Nathan confronted David, and it would have to be a brave thing for Nathan to do. Confronting a king who has the power of life and death was dangerous. But Nathan trusted God and was brave and pointed out King David's sin to him. King David, you may think you have covered up your sin with the power of your kingship. That does not take the sin away. Your sin, King David, is still here. What King David did was confess to Nathan and to God that he had sinned against God. And Nathan said, you know, King David, when you can try to cover up your sin, you can even take your royal robes and you can twist your royal robes all around you and hold that tight around you so no one can see, but it will not help. There's only one way to get rid of your sin, and that is to confess it to God. Experience sorrow for your sin and ask God to forgive you. Psalm 51 in the Bible is the prayer that King David prayed asking for forgiveness. And this is what David prayed. Turn to Psalm 51, follow right along. Have mercy on me, O God, according to your unfailing love, according to your great compassion, blot out my transgressions. Wash away all my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. For I know my transgression, and my sin is always before me. Cleanse me with hyssop, and I will be clean. Wash me, and I will be whiter than snow. Create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Do not cast me away from your presence or take your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation and grant me a willing spirit to sustain me. My sacrifice, O God, is a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. You, God, will not despise. Well, that was David's prayer. When he confessed his sin and he expressed his sorrow for doing wrong, and he asked for God's forgiveness. Do you know what God did? Well, let's just unwrap the robes here. And there's his heart. And it's clear, it's clean, washed white as snow again. God forgave David. And God will forgive each and every one of us too when we admit our sin, express sorrow for the sins that we have done, and ask God for forgiveness. And He will give us His Holy Spirit to resist temptations in the future. Don't try to hide sin. Confess it and let God get rid of it for you. God bless you today.